In this lesson, we will be looking at reasons why we forget and also a concept known as memory construction. So far, we have looked at 3 steps of the memory process: encoding, getting information in, storing it into our storage centers, and then the ability to retrieve information once it's been stored. Oftentimes, information that we have stored, and in many cases know very well, we just cannot retrieve it. In other words, this is forgetting, our inability to get information out of storage. Let's look at a few reasons why we forget. So here's something we've all seen many times, but it's very difficult to pick out the correct penny. Take a minute and make your best guess. It's obvious that this is a very difficult task. This is something that we've seen a lot, but in reality, who actually memorizes the correct presentation of a penny? The answer is actually A. The reason why it's so difficult to figure out which of those was the correct penny, as I said, because most people don't sit down and try to memorize what the actual penny looks like, which side is the president facing, what's actually listed on the penny. And this is because we never truly encoded it. In order to get something into storage, we have to find it meaningful. We have to find it important. And for the most of us, we wouldn't consider knowing the details of a penny to be very important. So this is referred to as encoding failure. We never truly encoded or cared enough to store that type of information. If you were in a previous class today, can you remember what your teacher was wearing? Or perhaps the day before, or someone sitting beside you this morning, what they had on? Chances are, unless you found it interesting, you did not put that into storage, so it faded away. That's encoding failure. It's not truly ever getting into your storage facility, into your long-term memory. So many things that we come in contact with on a daily basis, this is our sensory memory, they just fade. If we paid attention and stored every detail, it would be information overload. So one reason why we forget is because we never truly pay attention to it or find it interesting or meaningful or use some type of encoding strategy to get it into storage. In addition, sometimes we cannot retrieve information from our long-term memory, things that we knew very well. And this is referred to as retrieval failure. We have 2 types of retrieval failure. The first type of retrieval failure is referred to as retroactive interference. New information blocks out old information. In most cases, it's very similar. For example, if you get a new cell phone number or a new address, you may forget your old one. As teachers, this happens to us all of the time. As we come in contact with new students and new names, oftentimes past names start to decay and we start to forget those old names. The second type of retrieval failure is proactive interference. And this is when old information comes back and blocks new information. One of the questions that I usually see on the AP Psych exam, I forget the girl's name, but she took French in middle school. And then when she went to high school, all of her friends were taking Spanish. So she took Spanish in 9th grade, and she sat down to take a test in Spanish, and all the old French terms that she knew kept coming back and interfering. Another example, as you can see there, you get a new girlfriend or boyfriend, and you accidentally call them by the old boyfriend or old girlfriend's name. Not a good idea. So here again, the old information is interfering with new information. These two terms can be very tricky. Think of retro is old. Okay, so you can't remember the old information. Proactive is new. You can't remember the new information. Amnesia is the loss of memory, and there are two different causes or reasons that can lead to amnesia. First of all, a physical type of amnesia is called organic or biological. It's organic amnesia. And this can be due to trauma such as a car accident, a blow to the head playing a sport, or it could be damage to the brain from drug use, or diseases like encephalitis or meningitis that cause swelling and bleeding in the brain tissue. There are two types of organic or physical amnesia. First of all, anterograde amnesia. This is when one cannot formulate new memories. Okay, so they can only remember things that happened before that traumatic event took place. If you've ever seen 50 First Dates, that's what Drew Barrymore in that movie has. She cannot formulate new memories. She is wiped clean every day, but she can remember the past. Retrograde amnesia. This is the inability to remember anything before the traumatic event occurred. And this is the most common. And if you've ever seen a movie where someone had amnesia, this is the type of amnesia that they would have had. So they can formulate new memories. They just can't remember who they were or anything that happened prior to that traumatic event. A psychological form of amnesia, this was a term that Freud came up with, which is referred to as functional amnesia. Freud believed that sometimes if something happens to us that causes us a lot of anxiety, distress, or pain, that our mind just purges it and blocks it out. And he referred to this as repression. It's a defense mechanism to help protect us, our psychological being, from distress and feeling anxious. So it's the inability to recall information about some traumatic event, maybe the loss of a loved one or you were bullied as a child, and that caused you so much distress that you just completely banished that thought from your mind. Now, this was Sigmund Freud that came up with this, and it is very controversial. Many people do not believe that this can actually happen, that your mind can actually dismiss an event that occurred. All right, so organic and functional amnesia. So the last concept that we need to look at is memory construction. Most of the memories that we have are not actually what occurred. Sometimes our emotions or our level of attention during the event can influence how we remember it. This is why we can all witness the same event, but we recall it very differently. Sometimes somebody can even suggest something about an event that you've occurred or witnessed, and you start to incorporate that information into your memory. So your memories change. They're always changing. Memories are malleable. So, like I said, just a suggestion, or sometimes think of you're telling a story to someone and they're really not paying attention. So you add some juicy details to it. And then you tell it over and over and over again. And then to you, it seems like it's a part of the memory and you forget that you've added it because just talking about it distorted your memory and changed it and created a new one. My grandmother used to tell me a story over and over and over again about when I was 3, this dog chased me and I threw my lunch at it. And I guess I was coming in from preschool or something. Anyway, I have a very vivid memory of that in my mind. But that's impossible because, as we talked about in neuroscience, due to infantile amnesia and the inability for information to get into your storage facilities prior to the age of 4.5, I could not have created that memory. So I created a memory just by hearing that story that my grandmother told over and over again. Now, Elizabeth Loftus, I have her name written there. She is the leading researcher in memory construction. She's a cognitive psychology professor. And in her classes, another experiment she did, she staged a theft. So in the middle of her class, somebody ran into the lecture hall, grabbed her pocketbook, and ran out. And of course, the students think this is real. And she says to the class, "Oh my goodness, I don't remember anything about the perpetrator except for his odd-shaped nose." So then campus security came in to question all of the students about what he was wearing, what he looked like, and their descriptions were all over the place. Some said he was short, some said he was tall, some said he had long hair, some said he had curly hair. Everybody had a different idea of what he was wearing, but since she put that into their memory about his nose, all of them made a comment about his nose. Okay, so their memory of the event actually changed or was created based on or constructed based on her suggestion. So most of the memories that we actually have, as I said before, are not actually what happened. You can go on a vacation with your family and you all experience the same thing, and you remember certain things that made you happy or made you miserable, and they'll remember other things. And so our memories of events are always different and changing. If someone in your family, if you had a memory about something that happened on vacation that you weren't really happy with, and then someone told you a detail that was positive, that can change your memory altogether. So memories never stay the same. They're always changing. So another experiment that Loftus did here is that she asked her students to watch a video of an accident. So everybody in the class watched this video. After the video was over, she gave some students, we call Group A, some questions, and Group B was given separate questions. So let's take a look at what those are. So Group A students who watched the car crash video were asked how fast were cars going when they hit each other. The majority of these students rated it between 10 to 15 miles per hour because of the inference of the word hit. Group B students were asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other. Just by seeing the word smashed in your mind means it was a higher rate of speed. And in fact, most of these students wrote down 35 to 40 miles per hour, a very significant difference. So just by having two different adjectives, their answers were very, very different about the same occurrence. And finally, that brings us to source amnesia or source attribution. And this is just the fact that sometimes if we see something or hear something, we don't remember who said it or where we saw it or where we heard it. So let's say if Mrs. Hoover told you something, and then a couple of days later you're telling somebody else, and you're like, oh, I think that was Miss Folk that said that. That's source amnesia. All right, that's everything with forgetting and memory construction.